that process started right around the same time that they started either laying off workers or not replacing them and cutting the union workforce. And that coincided with the negotiations with Fortis. So something is going on that just really is not for the public good and is not for it will not be promoting a sustainable energy future. My sense is that Fortis and a few people at high level management within Central Hudson are starting to take a turn that is absolutely in the wrong direction. And I just want to start distinguishing between them and the people who have provided such excellent service and know the system and are the people that have interacted in a positive way with the community. So I think we need to do that.
Thank you. Second that sentiment. I'm sorry. Did you have any question?
Well, I was just going to clarify, in terms of the evidentiary hearing, when you're talking about calling for people to go to the witness stand, and I'm Michael Novenson with the Times Herald Record, by the way. In terms of people going to the witness stand, I assume that would be management for Central Hudson and Fortis, or would there be other people who would be asked to take
Well, there are a number of witnesses that have submitted pre-file testimony, and the pre-file testimony is in Q&A format, and that testimony would be adopted by the person before he or she is cross-examined. And there are many, many witnesses that have been sponsored by the company, including some of the senior executives that have submitted testimony. The staff of the Public Service Commission has also submitted extensive testimony, and the gist of their testimony initially was, no, we don't think this is a good deal, and we don't like it. And then eventually, as all negotiations lined up, everybody was equally unhappy, and so they came up with a joint proposal, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
I'd like to, I'm sorry, we're running out of time, but I would like to just close this with John Kaiser, the president of IBEW Local 320, has just come and given the opportunity to say a few words.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, but actually I agree with you, Manet, what you had said there. It does seem like the company has recently taken a turn in the wrong direction as far as their responsibilities and obligation to the community. We've been the Central Hudson's workforce since 1945, and that's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 320. And every signal we've gotten so far, Fortis has given the indication that their intent is to outsource work. It seems to be their reputation, among other things. And when the customer is tethered to a dangerous product that Central Hudson delivers, gas and electric, I think that should be the role of the Public Service Commission, is that obligation to the customer to make sure that it's a skilled and trained workforce that's responding to the customers. So when you're in the streets, you see Central Hudson out there, whether it's in a snowstorm, a rainstorm, or a hurricane, look at the trucks. If it says Central Hudson on it, if it really says Central Hudson on it, what you really see is an IBEW Local 320 member out there, somebody that's helped build that reputation and the integrity Central Hudson's had for the past more than 6 decades. So, thanks.
Thank you.
You can ask questions informally.
Can I say
Come to the hearing.
I may be spot paranoia, but I also am very concerned about a proposal for a 500 million 36-inch gas pipeline to go right through the middle of Central Hudson's territory just at this time. There's a lot of information that I have about it if you're interested. This would be fracked gas, and Central Hudson plans to know nothing about it. This would go under the Hudson River and through Orange, Ulster, and Dutchess County.
What I would like to do is to read into the record the resolution that the Woodstock Town Board adopted last week, April 9th. Whereas Fortis Incorporated, a multinational corporation with headquarters in Canada, made an offer to purchase Central Hudson, a publicly traded utility serving the residents of the town of Woodstock. And whereas the Public Service Commission must approve this merger, and in order to be approved, the applicant must ensure a net public benefit. And whereas the PSC held only 2 hearings on the same day, one of which was held at 3:30 in the afternoon, when many Woodstockers are still at work. And whereas PSC staff recommended $85 million in community benefit funds for the areas covered by Central Hudson, for which Fortis has offered less than $50 million, and whereas Fortis is guaranteed a rate freeze for not more than 12 months, and whereas Fortis is not committed to expanding its alternative energy portfolio, and has publicly said it will continue to rely on natural gas for energy production, and whereas Fortis has not committed to improve the region's electricity system to meet the challenges of major storms like Irene, Lee, and Sandy, and whereas Fortis offers no reasonable plan for Woodstock residents to achieve an affordable, sustainable, and reliable supply of power, and whereas Assemblyman Kevin Cahill has highlighted the possible use of provisions in the North American Free Trade Agreement by foreign-owned or Fortis as a way to circumvent the ability of the PSC to fully regulate a merged Fortis Central Hudson and enforce New York State requirements to modernize energy production and distribution. And whereas Central Hudson workers would be guaranteed jobs for only a 2-year period, after which Fortis can begin to outsource work, now therefore be resolved that the Woodstock Town Board not support the merger of Central Hudson and Fortis under the terms that have been proposed. And be it further resolved, the Woodstock Town Board urges the Public Service Commission to seek better assurance that such a merger will benefit residents in the current Central Hudson utility service area, particularly with regard to improved infrastructure and support for renewable energy. And be it further resolved that the Woodstock Town Board urge the Public Service Commission to extend the period for public comment so long as necessary for residents of the town of Woodstock and other interested parties to assess the implications and potential impacts of the Central Hudson Fortis merger. And be it further resolved, the town clerk is hereby directed to forward copies of this resolution to Governor Andrew Cuomo, members of the Public Service Commission, New York State Senator Cecilia Chachik, and New York State Assemblyman Kevin Cahill. And let me close with saying that the Public Service Commission, to the Public Service Commission, we are the public, and we need to be served. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that the town of Woodstock did send a copy of that resolution to the Secretary of the Commission. It is filed in the record of this case, and it is on the Commission's website for anyone who wants to read it.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Gene Wall.
to the town of Rosendale, and we did 2 resolutions to support the opposition of, to oppose the Fortis takeover of Central Hudson. One was to point out, which I know you have in record, one was to point out the concerns that we have for the Fortis takeover. And the loss of jobs, we believe that there's no guarantee, and it looks very promising that they will probably do layoffs and bring outsourcing to their workforce. And, the community depends on having that employment. And it's important that the people that work for Central Hudson are a part of the community. We have had a couple of hurricanes recently that have impacted our town and our county and the whole community of New York. And we can see how important it is to have a utility that really cares about the people that live in the community. I myself had constant contact with Central Hudson. They cared about where their trees were down on their lines and if there were crews taking care of problems they were having. So I am in fear that if Fortis were to move in, they have no interest or obligation to be as conscientious as Central Hudson's been in the past. I also am concerned about the amount of money people have to pay for utilities. I'm the one that gets the call when someone's power's out or they don't have the money to pay their utility bill, and how am I going to heat my home? And if those rates go up, we're going to have more problems with people that can't afford to live in their homes and live in this community. So those are issues that maybe not everybody's aware of, because unless you're getting that phone call, you don't think about that. But those are the issues that come up when there's an emergency. And, 2 hurricanes right in a row, and Central Hudson was one of the few utilities that did not get slapped on the hand by the governor about responding to the needs of the community. And so I want to make sure that as a supervisor that you consider the importance of having utility in our community, that the people that work there are part of our community and believe that it's important to give good service. And the Public Service Commission is there to make sure that we give good service. And that's why we're reaching out to you. And I do want to thank you for listening to us when we reached out with our resolutions and our comments, saying please give us a chance to explain how important it is that this merger doesn't take place. And if, like you said, it does take place, that more controls are put in place to protect our workforce, our rates, and the kind of service that we get from Central Hudson. One of the other things that Central Hudson has always done is partner with the communities for energy savings and education and supportive projects that help people to retrofit their homes and support energy saving appliances and that kind of thing. Are we going to get that same help from a new Central Hudson that's taken over by Fortis? So I ask you to really look hard at the deal they're proposing and say, is this really in the best interest of our community? Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Ball. And next we have Elisa Ball from the Office of State Senator Cecilia Kachik. That name has confused me ever since I first saw it. Kachik?
Yes, there's 2 elements, cat, check, My name is Elisa Ball, and I'm the alderman in the city of Kingston for Ward 6, and I'm also the community liaison for Senator Cecilia Kachik. I have a prepared statement from the senator that I would like to read to you. I am pleased that the Public Service Commission has agreed to extend the public comment period and hold 2 additional public hearings on the proposed acquisition. However, I am dismayed that the PSC is not requiring officials from Fortis and Central Hudson to be present to answer questions from the public and their elected representatives. Residents in Central Hudson service area already pay extremely high rates, and I believe they are entitled to hear from the principals themselves the effect the acquisition will have on their rates and service. The stated mission of the PSC is to ensure safe, secure, and reliable access to electric, gas, steam, telecommunication, and water services for New York State's residential and business consumers at just and reasonable rates. The agency was created to be a watchdog, protecting the rights of New York's ratepayers. The residents of the Hudson Valley deserve assurances that the PSC is acting in their best interest, and those assurances can only be secured if the PSC acts in a completely open and transparent manner. I have several concerns about the proposed acquisition. The first, based on the reports that Fortis will take on new debt in order to fund the acquisition. Will this new increased debt burden result in higher rates for residents and businesses? It has also been reported that Central Hudson workers are only guaranteed their jobs for 2 years, which would leave Fortis free to increase the use of contractors and eliminate jobs. For this reason, I understand IBEW Local 320, which represents Central Hudson workers, opposes the merger. We need clarification of the issues related to jobs for our Central Hudson employees and their families. Additionally, the acquisition agreement will not require a plan for the company to improve the power distribution grid to protect against the effects of serious future storms or to promote the use of sustainable energy. Until these concerns are adequately addressed, I will remain opposed to the acquisition of Central Hudson and Fortis. Thank you.
Next we have Paul L. Graham from the Hudson Valley Area Labor Federation.
Good evening, gentlemen. For the past 6 decades, the dedicated and intelligent workers of the IBEW 320 have been Central Hudson's contractor. These workers are our neighbors and our friends. They pay local taxes and are a large part of our local economy and community. Fortis says they will only maintain the current staffing of union workers for 2 years. If we let Fortis come into our communities and contract this work out, we will face a litany of challenges. 525 workers will be out of work and unable to contribute to our communities. Service will ultimately be slow as there will be a loss of in-house knowledge. New workers won't know the area, won't be as familiar with the grid, won't feel the responsibility to respond to emergencies, and won't be part of our community. The group that I represent, the Hudson Valley Area Labor Federation with its headquarters in Newburgh, represents workers throughout 7 counties, including 3 of those serviced by Central Hudson, Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster. In recent years, IBEW lost 40% of its gas mechanic workforce and 13% of the overall union workforce, or better said, 79 fewer working men on the ground, while upper management has increased its personnel. Fortis simply wants to be a foreign investor, outsourcing work while disregarding quality. They want to avoid conflict by delaying layoffs for 2 years. But we are not blind. We need to stand up for our local community, our local workers. The acquisition of Central Hudson by Fortis is not, in our view, in the public interest. Therefore, I, as president of the Hudson Valley Area Labor Federation, representing 130,000 workers, proudly stand in opposition to this merger, and we urge you to do the same. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Next we have John Speedley with the AFL-CIO.
Hello, my name is John Speedling. I live in New Paltz, New York, and I'm a Central Hudson customer. Recently, I started working for the AFL-CIO right here in Hudson Valley, and more importantly, I started working for over 500 quality union employees at Central Hudson. I know Dan and others today will discuss the financial issues and about why this is a bad deal for us, the ratepayers. Then Jen and the other environmentalists will talk about how horrible this is for our green economy future, the lack thereof. So you might assume that I'm here today to discuss the amount of jobs that will be lost, the amount of lives that will be ruined because of this takeover, how work will be outsourced and how our good tax-paying neighbors will be out of work, or how towns and communities will be destroyed without this revenue, and how schools and social services will decrease. Similar to what we saw when a power plant owned by a foreign company closed and left hundreds of our neighbors jobless and burdened an entire town in Ulster County. Since that closure, which was only last year, 2 schools closed in that particular town where a majority of the workers lived. 2 schools in a town with a population of 4,000 people is quite a lot. I don't even want to get into the amount of jobs that were lost when the schools closed, which I won't, because that's not why I'm here either. Why I'm here today is to discuss the issue of transparency. Everyone here, probably including yourself, sees how there's not one public benefit to this merger. But unfortunately, we're in the minority. Not because the majority favors the merger, but because they don't know anything about it. Fortis spends tens of thousands of dollars on PR campaigns to hide this merger from the public. Average companies spend about 10% on PR and marketing. Fortis pulled in over $315 million last year, so I think it's up to you guys to do the math. It's quite a lot. They were able to use this money to mislead the public with statements such as 90% of the shareholders approve this merger. Well, that's simply untrue. The truth is only the few rich shareholders that happen to own 90% of the shares approve. However, if we actually view shareholders as people, which we already know Fortis does not, the true majority of shareholders, actually people shareholders, oppose this merger. It's a classic 99% argument. Those with the most money dictate the masses and apparently speak for them too. So today I took the liberty of conducting my own survey. I surveyed 50 young adults, most of which happen to be students. 48 of the 50 had no idea the merger was happening. And these students all lived in the Hudson Valley area and all were Central Hudson customers. So 48 of the 50 had no idea what was happening. Yet 45 of the 50 did know what Central Hudson is and what services they provide. So again, 48 of 50 were unaware. That's 96% of people who don't even know about this merger. Look at all the people we have here today. After explaining the details of the merger, all 50 people agreed there was no public benefit at all. Additionally, 41 of the 50 felt discouraged because they didn't know there was anything they could do to stop the merger. However, there is one thing we can do, and that is to convince you and the rest of the Public Service Commission that it's bad for the public. Fortis takes pride in saying approval by the New York State Public Service Commission of the Fortis acquisition of Central Hudson Energy Group is the last significant regulatory matter required to close the transaction. Well, sir, you're our last hope. Please do your job. Please save our community. Please stop this merger. Thank you.
John Kaiser, IBEW Local 320.
Good evening. My name is John Kaiser. I'm the President and Business Manager of International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 320, representing the boots-on-the-ground employees of Central Hudson throughout the Hudson Valley. And at this point, hearing the speakers before me, I'm about to echo a lot of the comments that were made tonight. Because it is apparent that since the announcement of the proposed sale of Central Hudson Energy Group to Fortis more than a year ago, that Central Hudson has been aggressively outsourcing work, most notably in its gas department. Everything we know so far about Fortis is that they promote this outsourcing. The boots-on-the-ground jobs are dwindling, while the company continues to inflate the numbers of managers to higher than they had even in 1980, when they had over 1,300 employees, and they ran 2 large fossil fuel generating plants. They don't have them now. They do have less than 900 total employees, but as the speakers before me said, we're down to 525 boots-on-the-ground jobs. When you see a Central Hudson truck working in the electric lines of gas in the streets, and what you really have to do is look at the truck and make sure it is in fact a Central Hudson truck and doesn't have the small letters on it that says contractor for Central Hudson, or another contractor that marks his trucks up to almost look like Central Hudson, but it's got a different name on it. But when you see that Central Hudson truck working on the electric lines with gas in the streets, what you really see are members of IBEW Local 320. What you really see are your neighbors and your community members. What you really see is a skilled and dedicated workforce responding at any time of day or night, no matter what the weather is or how bad it is. What you really see is what the Public Service Commission should require. That a utility should maintain a skilled and trained permanent workforce that has that in-house knowledge, base, and experience to respond to the customers. Customers that are tethered to that dangerous product that this utility delivers to its customers, called gas and electric. To do otherwise, it's not in the best interest of the customers, it's not in the best interest of the ratepayers, and it's not in the best interest of the Hudson Valley. So for these reasons, IBEW Local 320 is opposed to the merger of Central Hudson and Fortis. Thank you.
Robert Gabrielli.
I'm Bob Gabrielli. I'm a resident of New Falls, New York. I'm also treasurer of New York State Crime Stoppers. And we take very seriously our role in especially protecting people who give us tips. So we try to devise a foolproof way that, the IRS gives us an exemption, we can pay with cash. But how do we protect those people's identity? So we thought about it for quite a long time. We came with the absolute greatest idea in the world. We subcontracted out all our record keeping, and our 800 number is answered by a firm in Canada. We are jurisdiction free. We can't be foiled, we can't be sued, we can't be sued, we can't be subpoenaed, for any identities. I have a real great concern about losing jurisdiction over the company that's going to provide us electricity. Also, I live in the Springtown area of New Falls, which is a low-lying area along the Wallkill River, which is 80 miles long, begins in southern Jersey, moves upstate. I've lived there all my life. I'm 67 years old. And I'll tell you, when my friend's son was 15, he used to dive off this great railroad trestle. It's a rail trail now. And he would dive headfirst into the water, couldn't touch it. Now he's 40-some years old, he wades across it, it's chest deep. That water, P.S., Crime Stoppers is teamed with Bob Kennedy and Waterkeeper, their Riverkeeper and Waterkeeper also accessible on our app. I had to get that plugged in. It's a mobile app. But this river runs up from the south through New Jersey, through the black dirt areas. And as it's moving, it has energy. It gets those soil particles and it moves them along. And then what happens is there's a dam. Central Hudson operates a dam in Dashville, New York. And when that dam slows or stops, there's no more energy left in that water, and it drops the water particles, and you have accretion, accretion, there's erosion, and the bottom of that river moves up. And now the river channel has been decreased, and it can't hold as much water by it. What that means to me is, in my lifetime, I've seen more and more flooding. And our area is devastating to us and our homeowners. So that's very interesting because Central Hudson operates this dam. In 1988, they went to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulation Commission, and made application saying, although Carol Browner, who was then the chairwoman of the EPA, said in court papers that the Wallkill River was unquestionably a navigable waterway, they said that one dam in the immediate area was not a navigable waterway. And they had it removed from all the licensing provisions and jurisdiction again of FERC. What that means is there's no foilable logs for the operation of that dam. DEC has no jurisdiction. FERC has no jurisdiction. We don't know when they're raising and lowering the flash panels. We don't know when they open the dam and close it. And we can't find it. And now when we get flooding, I don't think This is something you would have to find out on your own. But I think that if you have a dam and you're manufacturing electricity, you'd want to impound that water until the time when you could sell it to another, put it on the national grid when the money's up, the money's down. I knew a guy who did that, and he said millions of dollars could be lost, or if someone went out for a cup of coffee, it's just like trading on the big board with that electricity. So what happens is we have no way of knowing if that water is being impounded, if it's economically driven or what. All we do know is that the river keeps getting more shallow, and we have no jurisdiction over that. So, you said a great thing, Judge and Commissioner. You said, what could you do to ameliorate this problem? And I didn't think about that. And I said, maybe you could have a fund that's maintained in the United States so that if there's any lawsuits or any judgments, we can attach it. Well, how can we guarantee that? How could we get jurisdiction over the operation of those turbines that hold back the water? Let me tell you, they did some work on that dam last summer, and they dropped that water level. They opened the dams up, and they dropped the water level 4 feet in 7.5 hours. But yet, when we see big storms coming, and we get hurricanes are coming, and that water level is still right up at the top. And I'm afraid that it may be quite possible that Central Hudson is using my front yard as a water impoundment area. I wish you would check into that. I'm asking you people, please, to determine if this is the case, water studies, and that's what I would like to do. We're talking about mitigation. I'd love to see a study done. I'd like to see if the river needs dredging. If it is, maybe that could be a condition of your approval, that sort of thing. So I think if there's real economic problems that should be addressed before we possibly lose jurisdiction of this country. Thank you.
Which river? That's the Walk. All right. Pam Grimsby.
I'm from Thailand, and what I want to say is that I have an objection to the merger of Fortis because it's a foreign company, and I don't believe that an energy company should be a foreign company. I believe that a local company, or even better yet, something supervised by government, would be a much better choice for an energy. Energy is a very sensitive business, if you want to call it a business, because it is, particularly at this time, it's going to create problems for the environment. Fortis does not have a good record for environmental concerns. It's not going to worry about our cost of energy, our jobs, being efficient, or the programs that Central Hudson has had in place in terms of dividing the cost of energy over the course of the year for people that are of low income. Energy can create a real stranglehold if it's not handled properly. Fortis is for profit. They are coming here to make a profit in our community. We should be looking at switching from fossil fuels now into green energy. Fortis is not the company that's going to do that. The Hudson Valley right now needs a commitment to changing over to green energy. Fortis won't do that. Thank you.
James Pepler.
Hello. This is the first time I've ever done this. And ratepayer and person who's retired from this area. And I don't have a lot of facts in the way that all the people speaking have brought a lot of facts to the table, and I think we should be listening to those. What I do have is a point of view that I'm sure you may already be taking, but I'm just reiterating it to you as you on the commission, that there are valid reasons why companies may want to grow, merge. If a Central Hudson saw value in merging with another New York State utility for benefits of increasing its capitalization or expanding and making it more efficient its services, that would be a valid reason why you might participate and encourage and approve that kind of growth. And if it was on the verge of bankruptcy and needed somebody else to come in and take over, that would be a valid reason why a company might look outside for it to be acquired by a company that has more resources and could put it back on its feet. As far as I know, from my experience here, Central Hudson's doing a pretty good job. And if it's not broken, why fix it? The other point of view that I would like to suggest is that there are, what I see in the history we've seen in the economic situation that this country has gone through and the world is going through, there can be potentially invalid reasons for acquisitions to take place. When acquisitions go on by corporations that are simply growing their own base of control to pull more profits in for people who are just investing in investing, as opposed to people who live here in the Hudson Valley who are vested in the circumstances locally, the jobs and the services that the utilities are provided. These are vested people. And there are investors who invest in processes and companies for the sake of making them better. There are serious investors that still do that kind of investing. But my information that I've been able to glean from this, and you'll have much more resources, and certainly this is the Fortis of that category of a corporation that's acquiring for the sake of acquiring for the sake of improving profits and return to investors that do not live here, who are not vested in the community and in the state of New York. And those, I think, are invalid reasons, and reasons why you might well consider not approving this particular takeover. Earlier you asked the question of what would change my mind on this, what could possibly be part of the package. And I think it's something that's unlikely to come from Fortis, but if there was part included in this package, which was a serious and aggressive commitment to reorganizing itself, to refocusing its energies on divesting itself from the non-sustainable energy sources, investing in what would make this community and this area more sustainable for the long haul, investing in ways of improving the service to all the customers, and particularly investing in longer commitments than 2 years or 5 years, but an absolute commitment to using local resources exclusively as a term of how they will do business in this area. I think it's unlikely that those kinds of concessions are going to come from a corporation that is basically in the business of acquiring for its own sake. But that would be something that I might consider as applauding and approval of this, but otherwise no.
forgive me, I get nervous with this stuff, so I might not speak so well. Honorable Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity of speaking before you tonight. As I'm in agreement with the comments made so far by the majority of the individuals, I believe some very important issues have remained out of the discussion, such as energy independence and national security. In his State of the Union address on February 12, 2013, President Obama urged energy independence, not only from a sustainable standpoint, but also in terms of increasing our national security. The President also stated as America's energy demands increase, the necessity for renewable resources doubly increases. The proposed sale of CH Energy Group to Canadian Fortis is a giant leap backwards from its fundamental presidential national security objectives. In fact, Fortis Incorporated in Canada will be capable of achieving what we in New York State can no longer achieve. That's to be able to manufacture and distribute utilities to include both electricity and natural gas, as we have already lost our neighboring utility counterparts such as New York State Electric and Gas and Niagara Mohawk to foreign entities. The proposed sale of Central Hudson puts New York State and the United States of America in a perilous predicament. Would be subject to the whims of foreign countries with little or no oversight, protection in the manufacturing and distribution of our much-needed utility infrastructures. And it should be noted here as well that New York State, via the Marcy South electric transmission lines and electrical substations, receives electricity through this very corridor served by Central Hudson. With New York City, the capital of the financial markets, a disruption in electricity for this industry would be capable of sending markets reeling, or the opposite may occur. With little to no oversight protection, the customers could be held hostage to pay whatever the producers and distributors decide. Also, being a non-U.S. owned utility, Fortis, through the North American Free Trade Agreement, be able to utilize existing utility infrastructure right-of-ways to expand and increase the distribution of utilities with little or no environmental oversight. As a 1,000 megawatt natural gas electrical generation plant is in the final stages of approval in Dover Plains, New York, a new natural gas pipeline would be needed to fuel that power plant. There are currently plans to construct a new 36-inch natural gas pipeline through the Central Hudson corridor, including under the Hudson River, adjacent to the walkway over the Hudson. If Central Hudson is sold prior to the construction of this new gas pipeline, what is the legality for the environmental oversight? Additionally, Fortis has no intent to utilize or promote sustainable energy. The primary desire is to utilize the natural gas available in North America. Make no mistake about it, the pending sale of Central Hudson to Canadian Fortis is a lose-lose proposition for Central Hudson customers, New York State, the United States of America. Today, I'm at this Public Service Commission hearing to allow my voice to be heard, and I say no. Honorable Commissioners, I'm requesting an evidentiary hearing as well as a recommended decision to my remarks. Thank you very much for your time.
Amy Carpenter.
Thank you for this hearing. I'm a Central Hudson customer and a new member of Citizens for Local Power, a new group that's just sprung up. I live in Rosendale, New York, and I'm a puppet theater director. Puppet theater traditionally has an exchange between devils and angels. So I wanted to present 5 illustrations of diametrical opposition to the common good, which is how I see this situation. Common good assumes the majority of Hudson Valley, Central Hudson ratepayers want their utility rates to remain competitive within New York State. Fortis is in diametrical opposition to common good, needing customer rate hikes to bolster its shareholder profits, rate hikes to offset debt from buyout payments to Central Hudson, and rate hikes to compensate for neglected grid upgrades we can assume. Okay. 2, common good assumes the majority of Hudson Valley taxpayers want the Public Service Commission, you, to use your teeth to protect us from potential unfair rate hikes. Fortis is in diametrical opposition to common good with its for-profit mandate and can use its international corporate status to test NAFTA rulings and possibly override Public Service Commission authority. 3. Common good assumes the majority of Hudson Valley residents want local workers to retain their jobs and continue to offer the benefit of their long-term knowledge of the local grid. Fortis is in diametrical opposition to common good, guaranteeing local union jobs for only 2 years, after which it can import cheaper non-union outside laborers with no knowledge of local grid. Common good assumes the majority of Central Hudson customers, having experienced recent power outages from Sandy or Irene, want guaranteed investment in grid improvement. Fortis, I believe, is in diametrical opposition to common good in this, with no plans for investment in grid improvement in its contract with Central Hudson, nor any substantive motivation for it given the Fortis for-profit profile. Common good assumes a growing majority of New York voters are in favor of decreasing New York's dependence on fossil fuels and in reducing New York's carbon footprint. Fortis is in diametrical opposition to common good, stating on its own website that it wants to take advantage of, quote, the competitiveness of natural gas prices versus alternative energy sources in North America, end of quote, and it wants, quote, no significant changes in current New York energy plans and environmental laws, end of quote. Tonight, I join with others in requesting an evidentiary hearing and the presence of a Fortis representative to face the public that it intends to fleece, in my opinion. Cited below for the public record are 2 brief quotes from the book The Last Flight of the Scarlet Macaw, which was one woman's fight to save the world's most beautiful bird, written by Brooke Barcott, Random House 208. Here the author is speaking with zoo lady Sharon Matola after Fortis won the fight to build the hydroelectric Chamilo Dam in Belize. Quote, one of the things you were up against was a company that didn't have to care about its image, I told her. It was a big company, but small enough, and based in a faraway place that it just didn't have to care. I was at the company's annual meeting. Their shareholders are hedge fund managers and Canadian retirees. They've never heard of Belize. They don't give a damn about what goes on down here. They care about their dividends, and as long as Fortis looks after that, they're happy. That's end of quote on page 270. Earlier in the book, there are quotes from Robert Kennedy Jr. as he visited and urged the Belizeans to stand up and fight for their river. Quote, Fortis is stealing from you, he told the people. They're doing it by destroying this wonderful river and by taking an obscene profit out of this country. You already pay the highest energy bills in all of Central America, and this dam is going to make those bills go even higher. Before you put a dam over one of the people's waterways, you first have to do a series of reports, he said. The people who created those reports on behalf of Fortis lied to the public. They lied to the government agencies. That's an act of fraud. It's an attack on democracy, on the economy, and on the soul of this country. What Fortis is doing is wrong, Kennedy concluded. In 20 years of environmental advocacy, this dam is one of the most harebrained, reckless schemes I've ever seen. End of quote, page 205. Expropriated by the Belize government in 2011 for disproportionate rate hikes, Fortis is still seeking compensation from Belize for its losses. Fortis is in its 12th year of record earnings despite the expropriation and seeks to break new ground in the U.S. according to the St. John's Telegram. So finally, I request a recommended decision. Thank you for your consideration.
Next is Manager Green.
Good evening, and thank you very much. It's really really encouraging to see Commissioner, is it Sayer, here this evening, and I want to thank Mr.
What's your name?
I've forgotten your last name.
Omar.
Yes.
President.
Yes, just
President.
Yeah. For not just holding these hearings, but really welcoming people and helping them to relax and speak their mind. I go to a lot of hearings in the course of my job as environmental director for Clearwater, and that's not always the case, so it's deeply appreciated by this community. I want to reiterate what others have alluded to, that utilities provide essential services. And in the case of Central Hudson and the other utilities around the state, the distribution portion of the service that they provide is provided as a monopoly. So it's not like they're building widgets or selling designer clothing. They're selling an essential service. And in that regard, they really need to be regulated and the public's interest protected. They should not be subject to Wall Street speculation. I don't know how much the Public Service Commission can do about that and how much would require a change in laws, but common sense says that this is not just an unessential commodity. It's an essential commodity, and it is a monopoly. You asked why is this particular merger worse than others, and we'll be preparing a full analysis of that. But one of the things that strikes me initially is that the termination payments of the two top executives exceed the economic development incentive for a 5-county service area. So 5 counties get less than one termination package, and there are 2 of them. There's no commitment to transitioning to a green energy economy. You asked, if we change some conditions, could we change our mind? And I want to say outright that I don't think anything would change my mind about the Fortis takeover of Central Hudson. I think that if Central Hudson collectively needed to sell the company, and for example, Con Edison already has acquired Orange and Rockland. This is an adjacent service area. Such an acquisition might make sense. It's also a New York company, and we won't have to figure out the potential challenge of NAFTA. If the rates charged to the customers, to Central Hudson customers, and that's the residents, the businesses, the municipalities, and everyone who makes up our community, reflect the cost to provide the service, maintenance, and to prepare for a transition to distributed energy, which I heard Chairman Gary Brown speak about so eloquently. That includes increased solar net metering, it includes microgrids, and it includes dealing with the bidirectional flow on existing distribution systems. Those are real costs that should be integrated, but unreasonable profits and Wall Street speculation really should not. And then a guarantee of union jobs. And the reason that this is important is that these linemen and the workers know the system. That's why when, I don't remember, it's the Morehouse and Moreland Commission came around the state, Central Hudson got very, very high ratings in response to the Sandy and other disasters. What happened is people came in from out of the area, and they don't know the area. But our service providers, our union workers, really do know the system, and that's why we've had as good service as we have. That they would guarantee that they would actively promote a transition to a green energy economy. And finally, that they would guarantee that the total of the termination payments to the top executives did not exceed individually, but the whole total package did not exceed a 5-county economic development incentive to the Central Hudson service line. Thank you.
Is Betty Flipstar or Flipstar? Or none of the above?
Yeah, I go by Betty.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. This is my first time speaking as well, and I think that it's really amazing that we have so many members of our community that have come out for this, when honestly, in our local news of what has been happening in Boston or West Texas or other places that has taken over our airwaves, we hear very little of what's happening in our own community that we really feel that we can respond to. Sitting back in my seat, what came across to me is that you are sitting below the words trust. We trust. And nowadays it's very hard for the person, not corporation, but the little person like me, to trust in our government and to know that people will stand for us and are in that position of trust. I was a school teacher, and I had the trust of many, many parents, a few of which are here in the audience. And it is today that I realize what that trust must mean to you, to keep all of us in Ulster and Dutchess counties in your consciousness and do the right thing for us. I have real concerns about this takeover. One is that just even look at the name of the corporation that we're looking at, Fortis. Fort meaning strength, right? Central Hudson says what we are about. We're about Central Hudson. We know those people who come to our homes and take care of our electrical needs. We will not know the people that come to our homes if Fortis takes over. I live in Riften. There may be maybe one. I know Joe's here from Riften. Most people, even in Kingston, don't quite know where I live. And I live between Kingston and New Paltz. And let me just give you a for instance. In Riften, we're a little hamlet. I think maybe 800 people. I'm not quite sure. But I have a Rosendale telephone exchange. New Paltz delivers my mail. Kingston is where my kids go to school, and I'm in the town of Esopus. Try to explain that to somebody from Canada. I don't think they would get it. The other thing as a teacher that has always been in the forefront of my mind is informed consent. At one point, the school districts, actually I think it was over in Poughkeepsie, decided to do away with informed consent for parents. And they said, you know what, we'll just sort of, if the parent doesn't want something to happen, they should write in. But of course that relied on a bunch of kids going home with a backpack filled with the same color papers for parents to go through that backpack to find a little piece of paper to say, oh yeah, I don't want this for my child. And I feel very much like this is a little bit like that. There is not enough community members that know that this is happening. And that's because of something that's really overwhelmingly amazing, because of something I did at my school once, thanks to one of my parents who helped me with this. I spent 90 hours, my own hours, doing something that would show my students what capitalism was. And what I did was I assigned jobs to every student. They got a whole handout for what they needed to do.
I had people who were in charge of a widget company, workers for that widget company, kids that were in school, university teachers. I had about 60 kids doing this. And I divided their moments that we had to work on this project. They even had Betty Bucks with my little picture on it. It was very cute. But we divided their work so that 1 minute equaled 1 hour of their day. So that they had 24 minutes of a session, and in that, for 8 minutes they worked, they slept for 8 minutes, they had X amount of time to do their regular work, and they could have cars, insurance, there was a ton of stuff that went into this project. And what I realized after seeing this was that in a day, a normal human being has no time to come to these events at night because they're taking care of their children, they're working on their kids' homework, if they're married, if they're a single parent, God bless them because they are doing both jobs. They are taking care of their bills, they are taking care of their parents. It is only in the last 2 years since I took a leave of absence to assist my 92-year-old mother, who lives now in Kingston, that I have any time to put forth my energy into understanding what is happening in our community locally and globally. And what I think that we have to be very, very aware of is that not only do many community members not understand this merger or takeover or whatever it would be, they don't understand fracking. Many people have not heard about fracking. They don't know what it would do to our environment. They don't know what it would do to our towns. And I think it's very important that this commission takes the opportunity to make sure that every member of Ulster, every member of Dutchess has heard about this takeover. Because I'm telling you, I am lucky that I'm a member of Occupy Kingston, because it is through that and through their Facebook page that I even learned of this, and I learned of it this morning. And I'm pretty well versed on what's happening in general with our community. But this is appalling that people don't know. So, of course, I worry about the workers who are our friends and our neighbors, that they would have a job. Of course, I worry about our environment. I worry about the rates going up for everybody. It is enormously difficult in this day and age to pay one's bills. But I am concerned mostly for the people that don't know this is happening. It is a bit like pulling the wool over people's eyes. So, given that you are below the word trust, I would hope that you would take that as seriously as I, as a teacher, took the trust of my students, and be willing to extend the opportunity for people to make a comment, and for them to be allowed to know what is happening, and for Fortis and Central Hudson to come here and face the public. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I prepared a very short statement, which says, and thank you, whether you want to stay relatively the same as far as where our energy comes from, or if you want our community to take a more progressive stance towards renewable energy for our region, the business of this merger makes no sense to me. How could it be good for our community to allow a foreign company with no particular expertise in the area of energy transmission, but rather an expertise in the area of profits for stockholders, to buy our monopoly electricity utility? If they're willing to pay $25 million to upper management and give next to nothing to experienced labor, they already have their priorities backwards as far as service to our community. But the biggest concern I have is that by nature of the business model, our community is at grave risk of having our only source of electricity being used as speculation by a foreign holding corporation. Being a corporation already gives them the power to be personally irresponsible for their actions. And being a foreign corporation puts them further from persecution by the U.S. if they fail their responsibility to us. Given the importance of this service to our community, I say that any deal with Fortis is fundamentally flawed. I don't like a foreign company, especially this one, coming in. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sally McKenzie.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you guys for extending the public comment period so that I could be here and help us to be here tonight. I don't have any prepared comments. I live in the town of Rosendale. I'm a homeowner, and having experienced the increasing frequency and severity of the storms, I count on Central Hudson, and they come through. And it's because the guys, they know the lines. And we will lose that knowledge base, as everyone has put here. I'm not going to repeat everything that people have said, but that's the major concern to me, that there's only a 2-year commitment to the union laborers. And another major concern to me is that there's no provision for renewable energy. Last year, I made the commitment to put solar panels on my garage to power my house. And working with Central Hudson, with my solar provider, was a smooth, seamless experience. They were very supportive. And Central Hudson pays the highest rate of net metering in the state of New York, so that people like me can make an effort to do this for our environment. And I don't know, under Fortis, clearly they have no stated commitment to renewables. So people that might want to put solar panels on their homes will have less of an incentive, or maybe even the red tape they may have to go through will make it just not doable. I also request that you hold an evidentiary hearing and seek a recommended decision in the interest of transparency. And anything you can do to educate the public about what's going on here, I would also appreciate. And finally, in terms of your question about is there anything that Fortis could do, for me, I don't believe that there is anything that Fortis could do, because I don't believe that it's in the public interest to give this service away to a foreign multinational corporation that I do not believe we would have the power to adequately regulate. I just don't think it would be possible. Is there a kind of company that I would like to see it go to if it was going to be sold? Yes, an independent, locally owned company or cooperative. Thank you.
Ed Hackman.
Well, it's an honor to be able to speak here. I'm a member of Frack Free Catskills and Sovereign People's Action Network. And our organizations both believe that gas fracking would be a disaster for the state and generally for the earth. And the attendant pipelines, such as NYMARC, are also a disaster in waiting, such as a pipeline that blew up in West Virginia recently and made a tiny little squib in the news. It melted part of I-77 and blew up several homes. Fortis, now I draw a sign and I spelled it with the anarchist symbol. It's not meant to be a scatological reference, although given their commitment to gas, you can take that as you like. People that know me, that believes a little bit of anarchism is good when it comes to our personal freedoms and our private life. But in terms of the utility and energy industry, which has such an impact on the future generations of this planet, and, a very basic need, that should be moving in the direction of public control, not private corporations, especially remote ones that, thanks to NAFTA, basically can just escape any kind of environmental regs. Oh, that's a restraint of trade, and so they can sue and probably win on that basis.
So we will be relinquishing what local control we have in great measure by having a foreign corporation in charge of one of our basic needs. And Fortis in particular has an extremely poor track record. As Amy Trumpeter so eloquently pointed out, their record in Belize is abysmal. They went down there and took over the electrical industry there, the utility there, a population of 300,000, that poor little country. There was a beautiful river valley where scarlet, and I'm reading from an article that is also referenced on that sign. Bear with me for a few little excerpts from that. There was once a forested river valley where scarlet macaws nested in giant quamlet trees and jaguars roamed, undisturbed by chainsaws and bulldozers. So when Fortis went there and flooded that valley, that river was partially poisoned by mercury, and all that natural habitat and the tourism industry that went along with that was severely impacted. They now have to warn people not to eat the fish from that river because of the mercury, methyl mercury, that resulted from building that hydro station there. And they were supposed to, they made a promise, as they are to us, that they were going to lower electricity rates, and in fact the rates went up. On March 3rd, 2009, following a regulatory review of Belize Electricity's financial performance, the head of a new chief of the Public Utility Commission down there, who, thanks to the previous one that allowed this to happen, was ousted by popular outrage because of all the energy inputs that go into extracting frack gas, and the fact that methane is something like 100 times the greenhouse gas of CO2. Going to be released anywhere from 1.5 to 9% of that leaks, and pipelines themselves have leaks. Moving towards gas, which is what Fortis has said they would do, and they're hoping to keep any kind of environmental and renewable standards at a minimum. They've said so. We don't want them. I don't think anybody here wants them, and this process needs to be extended so that the more the public hears about this, the more opposition there's going to be. Thank you very much.
Now, Makanowski.
I'll give you a second.
No problem.
Hi, my name is Del Kaczynowski from Pleasant Valley, New York. I missed the meeting yesterday in Poughkeepsie. I'm a Central Hudson employee retiree. And I don't like what they're doing because a lot of employees will lose their job after 2 years. Okay? The way I speak to some of the apprentices that are working here, and the executives fill up the pockets. They don't care about regular employees. And the thing is, I don't want you to sell out to Canadian people. Because what happens is they're going to make one profit and keep it in Canada. They only have a limit in the United States. Okay, it's bad enough. I have a quarry in town, Pleasant Valley. Some foreigner came out and bought them out. The employees lost their job 6 months after. Okay? And the thing is not right for the people who work here. They're going to hire employees for minimum wages after by about 40. That's not right. Because I know that those employees going to lose their jobs. And the thing is, when I read about it as a loose that they have for the employees, I read from that things and I don't like what I see. If I fill up the pockets, I want to do it by stock and their stock. They don't always going to make their own price. And that's not right. We should keep things in the United States. I am a foreigner. Okay? I was born in Russia. I was in a concentration camp. I went through World War II. I know what's going on, and I don't like what the Central Hudson is doing to us. I was a proud person who worked there. I made my living, and my family, I took care, no problem. I'm the only one left in my family. Okay, I'm just like the last one here. And that's it. The thing is, I hope people take a big consideration and stop that selling business to foreign countries. I mean, maybe the Central Hudson comes in, I'm not positive, if they're going to tip somebody up in Albany to sign the papers, that's not right. I mean, I worked hard. I was working since I was 8 years old. Okay? I didn't have a high college education a lot of people have right now that I couldn't afford.
We got local people working for local people, and there's no way you're going to beat that. I don't care who comes in here. As far as the history of foreign takeover industry in this country has led to higher costs for the customers, fewer American country, so bad that it has put some of the trucking companies out of business, and it has definitely raised the trucking rates to all the consumers in this country, no matter what you're buying. Whether you're buying washing machines, cars, or food, it still comes by truck, and you still pay the rate as part of the price. And NAFTA has hurt that tremendously. And NAFTA is going to hurt us with the utility company because, again, we're working under two different sets of rules now. We have the NAFTA rules and we have the state rules. And which one is going to get precedence? My guess is, being they're from Canada, that they're going to get precedence with the NAFTA. And that's going to hurt us big time. As far as I'm concerned, to answer your question, what can Fortis do to change our minds? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We don't need them. I don't want them. And I think I've heard that several times tonight. So I would ask you, I'm not interested in more hearings. I'm not interested in anything. All I'm interested in is the answer is no, this merger will not take place. That's it.
Randy's view.
Hi, I'm here speaking as a private citizen. I am a resident and Central Hudson electric customer from Woodstock. I'd like to first refer to the statement that was passed by the Woodstock Town Board and read here by Jay Wink, our councilman, before. That statement absolutely speaks for me. I believe that it speaks for the vast majority of Woodstock residents. And I'd like to say something. A couple of people have mentioned the trouble finding out what's going on with this in our media here in Ulster County, regarding especially these two hearings that I'd like to thank the Commission for having the hearing last night. Everybody speak in support of the acquisition at this hearing either. So far, in these two hearings, that case is Central Hudson has to coordinate and work out all technical issues with the other companies, such as Time Warner for cable and internet, for Verizon for telephone, and any other such companies that may come along in the future and need to use this public common. How is it that the country that was once preeminent in its power and prestige less than 30 years ago finds itself in the position now to be selling off the right-of-way of its public commons, of its public utilities and services? It's shameful. So I request and strongly urging the Commission to avoid selling off the integral public commons. Also, just one word in support of Central Hudson. And it talks, this point talks to the issue of outsourcing. Central Hudson has had a tradition in its aggressive tree trimming in order to prevent power outages from storms, of hiring outside contractors from many of them local, but some of them from other states and upstate New York. A couple of years ago, they hired a very aggressive, overly aggressive tree cutting company. And they came by our property in Woodstock, which is right along the road, and seriously damaged some trees that had no effect over the actual safety of the transmission lines during storms. I called Central Hudson and filed a complaint. And without going into the particulars, all I can say is that I received an apology from the company. I received restitution from the company in terms of replanting trees that had been destroyed by the overzealous contractor. Central Hudson, at least for Woodstock, stopped using that particular contractor to do its trees. Are we going to be able to expect that kind of public response from a foreign company? I don't think so. So the fact that we need our local representation from our local company, as we've heard before, which has been very responsive to the people of this county, all the way to what I mentioned before about the absolute obscenity of allowing a foreign company to take over our local distribution system and our local public commons, which are the right-of-way of not only energy, but of communications, require that the Public Service Commission, in the best interest of the people of this part of the Hudson Valley, not approve the merger via acquisition of Central Hudson by Fortis of Canada. Thank you.
I have a public access television show in Manhattan on community affairs every day at 12 noon, and also here in Woodstock, and I thank God for public access. I think one of the biggest problems is the public needs to be informed. As it's been pointed out, there's not one person in the public, both here or in Poughkeepsie, that was in favor of this acquisition. And I'd also like to say that at one time, I was a cellular telephone speculator in the late 80s. With my brother, I went to Bowling Green, Kentucky. We hired an engineer. We borrowed $8 million from AT&T to build out the station. And let me tell you, the absolute scariest thing that we did was to face the Public Utilities Commission. And the engineer explained to us the responsibility that we had to the public. And I'm just speechless that this is even happening in a state that is as great as the state of New York. And I'd say that if you're going to put in any caveat that if it must happen, that we're already a sold and enslaved people, then put in a provision for no smart meters and make sure that there's real contracts and that these monthly payments are not securitized. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Felicia Steele, citizen of Ulster County here, and I am definitely against this infrastructure of ours being sold overseas or across the border to a Canadian company for the obvious security reasons, but also at a time when this country needs more of a financial base than it has. Here we are selling this infrastructure, and with it goes profits to another country, and therefore not keeping it here. Also, Public Service Commission, you're commissioned to serve the public. And what we have here is a de facto sampling of the public. If more people knew about what was happening here, they would be here and they would be against it. They would be mailing the letters in to be against it. Also, your jurisdiction questionably may or may not overrule NAFTA. And in that kind of political climate, we cannot even rely on this taking place at all, because perhaps you would not be able to have jurisdiction. The other thing about this also was mentioned by several people about smart meters, and none of us wants to have our homes burned down, and that's what's happening across this country, where many of these postcode modulation microwave smart meters are being installed, especially on wood and residential buildings. This raises a question also of when you have a company in Canada that basically is a parent company of Central Hudson, as proposed, who would be liable? How could you hold them liable? And we're talking about issues of loss of life as well as of health and property.
And privacy.
And privacy. And for that and for many of the reasons mentioned by many of the fine people here, some of them I know and many of them I don't know. Also, I've spoken with Central Hudson workers when they've been around the neighborhood, and I found them to be very friendly and very knowledgeable and can explain their jobs and what they're doing. And I would not want to see those workers replaced with less knowledgeable workers who aren't even from the area. Thank you very much.
Rosalind Terry.
First, I just want to mention to Betty from Rifton, I stayed up all night inviting everybody I could think of from Facebook. So thank you. I want to thank you for this hearing. You did not have to give us 2 more public hearings, and you did not have to extend public comments to May 1st. So I think this really reflects that you really do want to know what we think. And you can see from the number of people tonight, if you wanted to even extend the public comment, I'll just throw a plug in, for another month or 2. If you're not convinced yet, and you extend it for another 2 months, we will continue to convince you. I wanted to mention that in preparation for this, I read a lot of the responses to the joint proposition, and I just want to mention 4 of the groups who were against this merger were POLE, which is a public utility law project, IBEW 320, RESA, which is a retail energy supply association, and NYSEMC, the New York State Energy Marketing Coalition. These 4 groups were against. The 2 groups who were for, number 1, the Utility Intervention Unit called UIU, that's now part of the State Department. And the second group was the Department of Public Services staff who thought the merger should go through. So as I saw that only 2 groups wanted it, I started to think, who really wants this merger? Central Hudson executives, Central Hudson shareholders who voted yes, but I happen to know there are a lot who voted no, who need these shares for their retirement income. So that's going to be a whole group of people that are going to lose retirement income. And the 2 others, of course, are Fortis wants it, and selected elected officials. There's a few elected officials who want this to go through. So I think that you can see that there really, nobody today or yesterday spoke in favor of this. What I did is, I went through all the responses, and I'm not going to go through them here. I'll send in a written comment. The responses that everybody had to the joint proposition. But I want you to know the conclusion that I came up with is there is no net public benefit to the Central Hudson customers. Absolutely none. And I'm not going to go into why, because everybody has been doing it. Contracts are going to be taken to law, to legal court. We just don't know. And I don't think we should trust it. And I wanted to ask if I could submit something. Somebody yesterday submitted an article for public record. And the reason I'm submitting this is it is a key article from the Times Union. Other mergers There's been a rocky relationship with New York regulators. What I want to say is, they talk about the fact that, other countries own our utilities, but nobody says that the two other companies in Spain and London are not part of NAFTA. NAFTA is Canada. So I don't think you can really make a comparison that really counts. And so this article talks about the fact that foreign owners do not take a direct interest or have more than a very general knowledge of the details of U.S. regulatory requirements. So I'd like to get that in for the record. And in conclusion, I want to mention the two things that we really want to have are, as people were saying, the evidentiary hearing, and we would also like a public recommended decision that the public can see what you decided and respond to it. So those are the two requests that I have. And the final question that you asked, would anything change my mind? The answer is no. The risks of having Fortis take over Central Hudson far outweigh any benefits. So I do hope that you will deny this. And as I said, if you're not convinced yet, we can find some more people to try to convince you. Oh, sure. I have it right here, ready to go.
And the article that was submitted as an exhibit last night is already on the Commission's website if you want to see it.
Right, this article is from Times Union, and it's called Alternating Currents. And it's about other utilities in New York State that are owned by foreign companies, foreign multinationals.
Okay. Robert Kelly.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I was an employee of Central Hudson for almost 42 years as a lineman. And I would like to see the younger people now that have been...
And I'm speaking for myself. Several years ago, the public was informed that a merger of two area hospitals would provide better service to the community. There was not supposed to be a loss of jobs. We are assured of similar good fortune by Fortis and Central Hudson. How can we be assured of these promises? Due to the track records of these mergers in the public interest that do not bring any significant improvements, I respectfully request that this merger be turned down. When are we going to learn from our prior mistakes? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and consideration of public opinion.
Jesse Gere.
This opportunity. I'm going to be really brief. I don't have anything prepared, but I just know in my heart of hearts, my mind of mine, my soul of souls, that it's wrong. And every time I think about it, I can't go any further with the idea that it's so unnatural to outsource energy, to outsource power. I feel like it's metaphorical, but it's also really real. And I just feel like this is a real amazing time that we're having here, where we're able to get the community together and speak up like this. And I really hope that the truth does prevail in this situation, because it seems really obvious that the people who are benefiting from the energy and wanting to create the energy are here, and we like the gentleman said, we need to learn from our mistakes. Instead of talking, because I'm not going to take that much time, and everybody said so much stuff that I really took in and heard, and I hope you did too. I would like to be bold enough to ask if we could just take a moment to all visualize something that we'd like to see while I'm up here, just to hold that space, if you would not mind. So I'm going to do that for a little bit. Thank you.
Weckerly. I'm a resident of Orange County, and tonight I'm representing the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club is a national and local grassroots membership organization committed to the protection of the natural, social, and economic environment that we all share. I'm a member of New York State's Atlantic Chapter Executive Committee and am making these brief comments on behalf of the club. We are very concerned about the sale of the Central Hudson gas and electric utilities. We overlook the gas portion of the operation here. As proposed, we are equally concerned about the cumulative impacts of energy projects that are related to the operation of Central Hudson and to the modernization of the long-distance and local distribution grid for which Central Hudson is also responsible. A major issue is the congestion at the Pleasant Valley substation just east of Poughkeepsie. The Federal Department of Energy has cited that substation as being one of the worst choke points for transmission on the entire East Coast. The various other projects all interface with Central Hudson, from the electricity from the north and the west down into the New York, New Jersey metro load zones. A major project, for instance, is what was approved today by the Public Service Commission, and that is the Public Service Commission approved the construction of the Champlain Hudson Power Express cable. That is a long-distance cable market in the Western Hemisphere. A other issue is the new power station in the town of Dover, the Cricket Valley Power Station. That's another 1,000 megawatt plus power station. The power from that will be delivered into the Pleasant Valley substation for a connection to the Central Hudson, Con Ed, long-distance transmission lines that go from the Albany area east of the Hudson into the New York City metropolitan area. That new source of power will already overload an already stressed out substation. What is Fortis going to do about that? What is Central Hudson going to do about that? Has this utility to be an attractive acquisition target so that their own golden parachutes, termination payments, change of control payments would be particularly lucrative for themselves. This is not an unusual phenomenon. A few weeks ago, I participated in a very important international operation as New York evolves toward what I call the EPRI model, the Electric Power Research Institute model of subgrids, mini-grids, and microgrids. What we used to call distributed generation, DG, as you distinguished authorities know, is now called by EPRI and others across the industry DER, distributed energy.
I'm Dietrich Klinghardt. I'm a medical doctor. I received my training in West Germany, and as a young doctor already moved to the US because I loved the United States. I passed my tests here and have been licensed here since 1983, and have been practicing here really since then. But I go regularly back to Europe to both teach there and to learn what's new over there. And so I'm being like a dual agent, bringing things that I learn here back to Europe, and things that I learned in Europe back to here. And I have a practice in Seattle that specializes in the treatment of chronic illness. And we sort of slowly moved up our ranks, me and the doctors that work with me. The average patient that we have has seen 23 other physicians before they've seen us. So we're sort of like, if you want, like a late stage of the journey that patients are on after they've maybe failed or have given up on other treatment modalities. And so in that position, we sort of were also forced to look deeply into the causes of illness. And the main thing that we discovered is that illness is not a static thing, that the foundational causes of illness are now quite different from what they were 30 years ago or 35 years ago or 40 years ago. I graduated in 1975 from medical school, and none of the things I've learned in medical school have prepared me for what we see now in the medical practice. I teach a lot of medical students that come through my practice, both from naturopathic schools and from traditional medical schools and osteopathic medical schools, and I am aware that the teaching in the medical schools to a large degree is lagging behind the evolution of illness. Like when I graduated from medical school, we didn't have a single lecture in those 5.5 years on chronic fatigue or on chronic pain. All the lectures were on acute pneumonia, on rare fatty acid disorders, which we never will see in our whole life as a physician. But the things that we encounter now every day, we didn't have a single lecture on. And unfortunately, that hasn't changed very much since then. So I want to just, from the beginning, kind of say from a medical perspective, there's kind of two kinds of illnesses. There's the illnesses that have a name, the traditional illnesses like diabetes or hypertension. There is fractures, and there's appendicitis. And then there is the much larger amount of illnesses that really go without a name, where the people feel they have lost their zest, they lost their enthusiasm, they lost their sex drive, they lost their joy, they don't dance anymore, they don't sing anymore. They're still living, but they're living sort of like a half-life. And our experience, of course, with the patients that we see is that every patient that we see is in that category. The main symptom, if I would put it in 2 words, is loss of zest. So it's not that people are suicidal, they just have lost the vibrancy of life, the color, the smells, the excitement, the sensuality of it. And we see that everywhere where we look, we see the same picture. I visit a lot of other colleagues and other practices, both here in the US, Canada, and in Europe, and see the same picture there. And so we, over the years, tried to distill down what is it really that has changed in illness and what is causing this strange state that we're in, that we're observing worldwide. And we really were able to distill it down to just a few factors. The main one being people have increasing numbers of chronic infections. We don't see the acute pneumonia very often or the acute staph infection. Yeah, those exist. They usually end up in a hospital, and the hospitals are doing a good job with the acute stuff. But chronic infections are even denied by the medical community that they exist. Chronic Lyme disease, chronic mycoplasma infections, chronic Epstein-Barr infections. They're given sort of like a sideline in the teaching and the medical community, and are not giving their true place because they seem to be active in almost everybody that we see. Chronic mold infection, chronic parasite infestation. Those things have been extremely rare when I graduated from medical school, and now it's our everyday discovery in our patients that are chronically ill that they have these things. And so when we look deeper, what is it that has changed in the last 15, 20 years that these chronic infections have become so prevalent? And what we discovered is very simple. It's the exposure to electromagnetic fields. The only thing that parallels the exponential increase in in chronic neurological illness, with the low-grade depression, the insomnia, the muscle aches and pains, and the fatigue, and the strange neurological symptoms with tingling, numbness, vibration in the body. That increases exponentially. The number of children to be diagnosed autistic doubles every 5 years now. There's no more an issue, well, are we overdiagnosing it? No, it doubles every 5 years. The only thing that parallels that increase is the increased exposure to man-made electromagnetic fields, largely in the high-frequency range. There's some exceptions that have also increased, but largely it's the high-frequency range from cell phone radiation, from the Tetra network that the police and other systems are using. The smart meters are the worst invention that we followed in the last 2 years. There's absolutely devastating consequences that I will share with you. The only development that parallels the exponential increase that we observe in neurological disease is the exponential increase in exposure to man-made electromagnetic fields. So as a scientist, we don't have to look very far, but neurological disease, Parkinson's, MS, ALS, autism, learning disabilities in children, behavioral problem in children, that's all exploding exponentially. And the only thing that fits from an environmental perspective and from a epidemiological perspective is that this is the electromagnetic waves that are penetrating our body that are responsible for this. And fortunately enough, we have good science now.
Over the past 80 years, more than 6,000 research studies have been published on the biological effects of electromagnetic radiation. The majority of these studies have shown biological damage being done. Of the many more recent advances in research, one notable study was published earlier this year by the University of Athens. The results over an 8-month period showed 143 proteins in the mammalian brain were altered after exposure to either a mobile phone or a DECT phone base, including proteins which have already been linked to Alzheimer's, glioblastoma, stress, and metabolism. Lead author Adamantia Fragipoulou states, "This study is anticipated to throw light in the understanding of health effects like headaches, dizziness, sleep disorders, memory disorders, brain tumors, all of them related to the function of the altered brain proteins."
This permanently destroys and alters the manufacturing of these proteins, meaning it completely changes the human organism permanently. The DNA inside the cell is a booklet, an instruction booklet, how to make proteins. And we have about 120 to 200,000 different proteins that are in the cell or in the cell wall. The receptors, how the cell wall communicates with the outside environment is through proteins. And inside the cell, the manufacturing that each cell does of antibodies, of neuropeptides, of hormones, of cholesterol, of building blocks that the body needs to replace, used up body parts, that's all done by proteins. Even the physical structure of your body changes. We've seen a host of people that had normal body weight for 40 years or 50 years, and suddenly their weight exploded when the phone company put up the cell phone tower 200 yards from their house, not even that close, 300 yards from their house. We've seen cancer rates shoot up the moment the network of cell phone towers was established in the house. We had a co-worker with us who had a son who was very, very sensitive to electromagnetic fields, and she lived here in Seattle, and he couldn't go to school because the schools at the time already had wireless installed in the schools, and he couldn't tolerate it. So she moved to Portland and then couldn't tolerate it there at all. Then moved over to Ashland, which claims itself to be one of the greenest cities in the world. And then when she Googled the cell phone towers next to the home that she had rented, she found that within 200 yards, she had over 90 cell phone installations that were broadcasting into her home, and her son was virtually going nuts. And then she moved out in the country, decided on homeschooling, and the boy's been doing well ever since. So after observing like some very very clear-cut clinical situations where people were affected by the nearby cell phone tower, we became very meticulous in asking people about their homes and looking at the literature. I got certified in building biology, which is the sort of science in Germany that governs these issues, where we learn how to use different instruments to measure these phenomena in the house. And the first thing that we noticed is that the most important time in the day when we are vulnerable to the influence of incoming cell phone radiation is the nighttime, when the parasympathetic nervous system is active and the sympathetics are withdrawing. That's when the damage is done, most of the damage is done. And so we moved very quickly in telling all our patients a set of instructions. So our patients have to turn off all the fuses at night. That decreases a phenomenon called body voltage, and I think I don't have to go into that. It's probably explained in another part of the video. We have people have to get rid of their cordless phones, because the cordless phones broadcast a signal 24 hours a day into the rooms wherever the person can walk and have reception. That is a very devastating radiation that was also tested in this Greek study that I just mentioned. It destroys the same number of proteins that the incoming cell phone radiation does from the outside, the cordless phone at home. So since 6 or 7 years, my patients are not allowed to have a cordless phone in the house. They have to go to Radio Shack, spend $25 for a corded phone, and that solves it. Then the last step that we do, that every patient gets to measure with the instrument from Gigahertz Solutions that we use, measure the density of microwave radiation in the bed location. That's measured in microwatts per square meter, and if that number, for me, if the number is over 5, it's an unacceptable sleeping location. First of all, we look in the house. If you find a location, there's eddies, we call that. There's turbulences created in the house. Very often you find a location where the reading is low. If you don't, the person need to use protection in the house, and there's 2 ways of doing that. One is a wall paint that contains graphite fiber, carbon fiber, and conductive particles that creates a Faraday cage in the bedroom. It's a pitch black paint that's put over other paint, and over that you can paint normal paint, and then that paint itself has to be grounded with a wire into the earth. And the windows are covered with curtains that use a silver-coated cloth that reflects the incoming cell phone radiation to the outside. Now, with that, in general, it's possible. Every place that we've looked at so far to bring the radiation down to the level where it's acceptable. Now, I want to roll this forward to the clinical picture. Half my practice is the treatment of autistic children. And we realized very quickly when we did this that there's 2 kinds of autistic kids. The ones that recover and the ones that don't recover. And the ones that recover are the ones that follow exactly this set of instructions. It is hardly done with the vitamins and with the other things that we do, with the behavioral therapies. They have a minor effect on it. The moment we protect the sleeping location of the child, the autistic children are recovering. Now, I can say that with great levels of certainty now for 2 reasons. One, because I have a large group of people that follow my teaching in Europe, and the Europeans, when they hear that, they get the idea and run with it. In America, unfortunately, especially the husbands have become a huge obstacle to this. Most American men never had more than 1 year of physics in school and simply do not have the understanding, but they have strong opinions without ever having understood physics. They have strong opinions about it, that this possibly cannot be true, because if it would be true and dangerous, the government would have done something. Well, you make your own opinion after watching this film. So what we did then is a study where we took 10 autistic children and went back to the sleeping location where the mother was when she was pregnant with that child, and compared it with the sleeping location of a mother that gave birth to healthy children. We had 10 mothers in that group, 10 mothers in this group, and in the group of the autistic children, we found that the measurements that we got for the microwave exposure in the sleeping location of where the mother was when she was pregnant with her child was elevated compared to the group of children that were normal. The same measurement we got by measuring body voltage. This is the exposure just to the ambient field, electric field in the home created by the electric wires in the wall. Found the same number, that the exposure, that the electric charge that is built up in the body was by the factor of 10 times more in the sleeping location where the mother was sleeping when she was pregnant with her child. And with that, the exposure to man-made electromagnetic fields has become the first factor that could be isolated ever in autism that could predict autism. I can go to the home of a pregnant mother now, take those measurements, and give her a reasonable assessment what her chances are to give birth to a child that will later be diagnosed as autistic. Now, as you can imagine, I was not able to publish the study. Nobody was interested. It was 10 children was too small a group to say something, even though the differences are so dramatic that even the 10 children led to a huge statistical difference. But I wasn't able to publish it because of the special interests that are now have found their way into the medical journals and the peer-reviewed journals. I think it's important to say that now the communications industry has become the largest lobbying industry in politics, larger than big pharma. In fact, by a factor of 3 times more powerful than the pharmaceutical industry, which used to be the most powerful arm, bending the decisions in Washington and in all Western governments for that purpose. So we weren't surprised when I wasn't able to publish these data, but it made us even more aware of the fact that we need what is called preconception health care. If somebody is planning on becoming pregnant, moms and dads need to know this information, that they have to protect the sleeping location of the mother from these fields that are absolutely tweaking the epigenome and the genes of the fetus that grows in there, predicting that this child will never reach its true genetic potential later in life because these early exposures. So one of the points I'm trying to make here is, if a fetus is exposed to microwave from cell phone radiation or from ambient man-made fields in the house, the fetus is affected by a factor of hundreds times stronger than a grown-up, fully grown-up brain, even though it's not harmless for the grown-up brain, but the damage is somewhat contained. So we have what I call nighttime technologies to protect people, which is the most important time. At nighttime, all the fuses have to be off. That means those fuses also switch off the breaker switch, also switches off the wireless internet, it switches off all telephone support systems, it switches off your alarm systems, which are equally bad, it switches off everything, every appliance inside the house. It probably does not switch off the smart meter. You know, we've had some smart meters that were on the same electric system that you could actually switch off with the fuses, and others you couldn't. That's at nighttime. You also need the protection from the incoming cell phone radiation. And for my patients, we do the earthing pad, where we carefully test out where we grounding the wire that comes off that.